Dale Jr. is going to be in Eastern North Carolina today, but the real celebrity, Dale Jr. is just going to be in Washington, but we got the real celebrity here in the studio this morning. The Speaker of the House of North Carolina, Thom Tillis, who happens to be, I think you running for county commissioner or?
Yeah.
What is it you're running for?
It's similar to that. It's the U.S. Senate. Although I tell you, a lot of times, school board and county commissioner, I think some of the toughest jobs you can run.
Well, you started on the school board, right?
Well, actually, I started on town commission.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Thom Tillis, the Speaker of the House for North Carolina, live in the studio with us this morning. It's great to have you here. I had heard you were going to be in Greenville today, and then last night I got the call and said that you were. I said, well, will he stop by the studio? So I'm honored to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be back. We're here all day. In fact, I'm looking forward. I think I'm going to be able to get to the game tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing a good game.
Yeah, we do need to get you something purple.
I'll have purple on before we get to the game time. Maybe even before then.
I didn't. You know, something I learned about you during the break. I didn't realize that your daughter actually went to ECU.
Yes, she did. She's back in Charlotte finishing nursing school. She'll be a nurse next year, but she did, and that's really when I became acquainted with ECU and a fan. Love the colors. In fact, I left my shirt at home. I'm going to buy another one before the game tonight.
Well, you know, tonight is the blackout night, but
I know that.
I'm boycotting that. I'm wearing my purple sweater. I told my wife when I woke up.
You admonished me for not doing paint purple, and now you're not going to listen to the school and go blackout. I'm going blackout.
Let's talk about, early voting starts today, so it's on.
Yeah, it's on.
It must seem like you've been running this campaign for years by now.
Well, over a year. You know, we filed back in June of last year, and now we're just 12 days away, and it can't come soon enough. I think and not because I'm just ready for it to be over. I'm ready for the nation to change directions.
Yeah. I think you have done a terrific job in the debates, but I especially thought that Kay Hagan did not do a good job in this debate this week since she showed up as an empty chair. But I just found out that she was actually tweeting responses to you. She couldn't be at the debate in Raleigh this week, the Time Warner debate, but she took the time to tweet responses to you while you were on the air? Allegedly, it was her staff, but I mean, come on.
That's what I heard. I tell you, though, if you look at the prior three debates, what's striking to me is how uncomfortable she was having to respond to the fact she's voted with the president 96% of the time, and the president said that all of his policies are on the ballot, every single one of them. So I think she's just clearly uncomfortable with having to answer for her record, which is a rubber stamp for President Obama and Harry Reid.
I said earlier this morning that she has been really unwilling to come forth, and I had a member of the media say to me this week, when we sat down and met with her, all she did was talk about Thom Tillis. She didn't talk about her record or what she's doing, but I mean, she doesn't have one.
Well, she does. Unfortunately, it's a bad one. It's casting the deciding vote for Obamacare. It's being silent while the EPA is about to put regulations on the United States and on working families, $1,200 a year in energy-related costs. It's $700 billion being taken away from Medicare to pay for Obamacare. It's $1 trillion more in debt to our national debt as a result of Obamacare. You know, when that's all you got to talk about, I can understand from her perspective why she'd like to shift the attention to things like having one of the best improving economies in the United States. That's North Carolina, like repealing sales taxes she put on poor people when she was in the state Senate as an appropriations chair. It's interesting she does. I really wish she'd like to talk about my record versus some of the false accusations been proven false by fact checkers, because if you take a look at what we're doing in North Carolina, it is blowing the doors off of most other states in terms of getting people back to work and getting economic activity going. She has nothing to talk about that she can be proud of. You can't be proud of voting for Harry Reid and supporting the leadership in the Senate that has basically shut down the Congress. Senator McCain was here last week. He said that he believes that this Congress will go down as the least effective Congress in our nation's history. That's a pretty profound statement coming from a senior senator.
You talk about what she has had to say about your record. Even the Washington Post has checked into this claim that education was cut by you $500 million. It's a ridiculous claim. Even they gave it two Pinocchios, means that that's their lying scale. They gave it two Pinocchios, meaning that it's just not true. And if you can do simple math, you'll know that education has actually increased. Spending on education has increased since you've been Speaker of the House.
Yeah, it's actually even worse than that. So Senator Hagan was the senior appropriations chair when she was in the state Senate. She left the budget in such disarray in 2009 after she was elected to go to the U.S. Senate that they had a real cut of almost $800 million in education. That was the mess that was left behind by Senator Hagan. Since I've been Speaker of the House, we've increased annual spending by about $1 billion a year. We haven't cut anything. And as a matter of fact, we provided a pay raise, a 7% pay raise on average. That's one of the largest in a generation. And I know that there were some teachers, the veteran teachers, who were frustrated with the amount that they got. But for 5 years, starting teachers didn't get a single raise, while veteran teachers at least got longevity increases. So we had to make sure that we did the right thing to get the pay scale back on track. And Republicans unfroze a step system that was frozen by Democrats after the mess Senator Hagan left behind. So I hope and I believe that the average citizen of North Carolina recognizes that we're getting the ship back on track and we're improving and increasing education spending. It takes time when you see the mess that Senator Hagan left behind.
East Carolina started as a teacher's college, and my grandmother went to ECU in the early 1900s. And she was one of the first students at East Carolina Teachers College to get a degree to go out and teach school. It's kind of the heritage of this school. To kind of show you where we are, they're de-emphasizing the teaching, the elementary education program at ECU because we can't get young people to go into teaching.
Right.
So what you guys did to increase teacher pay, particularly for young teachers coming to, if you don't do that, we're not going to have anyone who will ever want to be a teacher again.
Well, that's exactly right. And this year, through the pay strategy that we put together, I think we're behind only one other state in the Southeast. We were almost dead last year. So we got the starting teacher pay up so that we can attract teachers to North Carolina, so that we can go to some of the best community colleges and universities in the United States. Next year, we plan another raise that will get us up to right about the national average. So there are very few states that have taken those kinds of steps. And the reason we've been able to do that, Henry, is we made the tough decisions back in 2011 to get our economic activity back on track so that we're getting more revenue that we can use for that. At the same time, we're cutting taxes. The challenge you'd have if we spent more, we would have to take more money away from citizens and businesses through a tax increase, and we just thought this was a terrible time to do that with the economy as it is.
Thom Tillis live in the studio with us this morning. Thom is the current Speaker of the House, at least for a few more months anyway, and then hopefully in about 13 days he'll be the United States Senator-elect. Let's talk about the issues I think that people really want to know where you stand on. People want their federal government to assure them that we're safe. We've been through 9/11. The whole ISIL thing seems to be on the rise. We have a terrorist situation yesterday in Canada. People want to be safe on our soil. What are your thoughts about where we are right now in the war on terrorism, particularly in light of the fact that we've got this new threat from ISIS?
Well, first off, that this president is in trouble when President Carter even says he hasn't gotten it right in the Middle East. This president has failed to keep us safe and secure. Senator Hagan has failed to show up for work. She's failed to show up over the last year as ISIS has emerged as a threat. They started in Syria. Some of them decamped. They came to Iraq. They're taking ground that men and women in United States uniform fought and died for. The president continues to fail to come up with he just has not come up with a comprehensive strategy to defeat and destroy ISIS. ISIS has to be wiped off the face of the planet. And instead, this president thinks that bombing Syrian targets and Iraqi targets with ISIS encampments is a strategy. That's a tactic. His strategy has failed because he's failed. One thing, he tells us it'd be like ECU tonight sending their playbook to UConn. He has failed to listen to the generals. He has suggested that there could never be boots on the ground. I don't want boots on the ground, but I'm certainly not going to tell my enemy what I'm not going to do, because that gives them more insights into where they can actually expand their strategy. And if you take a look at something else, now the failure to address ISIS, Senator Hagan's failure to show up for meetings, in one classified briefing, she decided that a Park Avenue fundraiser was more important than a classified briefing on the threat of ISIS. Take a look at the border. This president is probably only weeks, maybe a few months away from signing an executive order that will provide blanket amnesty. That's going to cause an influx of people coming across our border that right now a 12-year-old can cross. If a 12-year-old can cross our border, you can be pretty certain that an ISIS militant, a human trafficker, or a drug trafficker can. Now he's setting up an open shop sign that could have millions of people come across this border. We have got to secure the border. Our strong nation needs a strong border. So no matter where you go, whether it's ISIS, the border, or Ebola, the Ebola threat is amazing to see just how many mistakes this president and his administration can make. Every time they say that they've got it under control, they make another blunder. And that's why people are genuinely and rightfully worried about our safety and security.
The other thing that we're worried about is where we stand in the world financially. We owe so much money to China at this point, and of course, no one has preached this and harped on it more than Walter Jones. I mean, Walter comes in here every 60 days, and it's the first thing he wants to talk about is the national debt. I mean, how are we going to get that under control?
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when the debt was $10 trillion, said it was the greatest threat to our national security. We know it's the greatest threat to our economic security. The president said the $10 trillion debt, when he was a candidate running in 2008, was a national disgrace. Senator Hagan, then candidate Hagan, said that it was a national disgrace. And now they've come here, and the debt's over $17 trillion. And with Obamacare, more than $1 trillion will be added over the next 10 years. They continue to spend at a rate that we can't sustain. If you manage the station's budget the way that the president has managed our budget, the federal budget's a joke, you'd be out of business. If I, as a family, managed my budget that way, I'd be bankrupt. But this president just continues to spend and spend and spend and not recognize we have to get spending in line, or our economic future, our economic security is at much risk as our national and homeland security is. The president and Senator Hagan doesn't get it. Senator Hagan, when she has voted for bills, have been bills that are the largest regulatory increases and tax increases that we've ever seen in our nation's history, over 6 years.
Early voting starts today, and we just had at the top of the hour, this hour at 8 o'clock this morning, the ABC National News had a story about voting starting today in most states, and the fact that turnout is going to be the issue that determines whether the Republicans take back the United States Senate. How optimistic are you that folks in North Carolina are going to get out and vote, particularly your folks?
I think the voters in North Carolina are energized. They're ready to change the direction. The only way we change the direction of the president's policies that Senator Hagan votes with 96% of the time is to change our senator. The volunteers, we're going all across the state. I have been from the west to the east over the last 24 hours, and I'll be from the east to the west over the next 24 hours. We're getting out to Victory Centers. We'll be at the Victory Center here in Greenville today. People are making phone calls, knocking on doors, sending out letters. I'm very optimistic that the citizens of North Carolina know that we need to have a change, and that only happens if they take the time to go out and vote. Early voting, there's more locations and more hours this year. We hope people take advantage of it. I'm going to vote on Saturday, because I'll be back in Cornelius. Vote early. Don't vote often, just vote early. Get out and vote and cast your vote. It's critically important. And in North Carolina, we're now said to be the most expensive Senate race in our nation's history. The eyes of the United States are on North Carolina. We are going to set the trend, I think, for Election Day. We're going to be one of the first polls to close, one of the first election results to be announced. We want to send a very clear message to this president that we agree with him. All of his policies are on the ballot. That's what he said 2.5, 3 weeks ago. All of his policies are on the ballot. I believe that the voters of North Carolina are energized, and they want to make it clear to this president and to Senator Hagan, who's voted with them 96% of the time, that those are not right for North Carolina.
It's funny, the complaints about where some of your support has come from with this huge amount of money that's been spent on this race. I think it just shows how important this race is to the entire country. And then when you look, it's like it's like the old Teddy Roosevelt line: "Weak points speak louder." How dare the Hagan camp talk about where your money's coming from when her money's coming from Harry Reid, Barack Obama, labor unions, all of the special interest groups that absolutely are throwing money at their liberal causes. I mean, that's where her money's coming from.
Oh, it's amazing when you think about Steyer, an economic extremist, a billionaire who's put so much money into these races. Senator Hagan,
I imagine there's been a little George Soros money thrown at you, too.
Soros, Bloomberg. It's interesting, too, that classified briefing that she missed. She was in a Park Avenue fundraiser for the former executive of a major financial entity in New York. Even the Charlotte Observer filed an article that said that banks and financial institutions in big for Senator Hagan. Over $1 million of money coming from these Wall Street firms that are making billions of dollars because of what they've done to our financial services institutions. So, Senator Hagan, if you take a look at her backers, they are some of the most extreme, wealthy people in this country. So, again, anything to shift the focus away from the debate. I'm ready to talk about the issues. That's why I was ready to show up for a debate, and she was apparently busy and didn't show up this week. Because when you talk about the issues, where Senator Hagan stands, lockstep with a rubber stamp with President Obama, is not where the citizens of North Carolina stand.
And by the way, for you Kay Hagan supporters who are right now going, I'm going to write Henry an email and say he owes Kay Hagan equal time. Bring it on. I'm telling you. There are 2 or 3 folks in town that whenever I interview a high-level Republican person, you're obligated to interview the other candidate now. We never back away from that. We always invite the other candidate. Here's the thing. Kay Hagan she's going to hide behind those 30-second TV ads. She doesn't even show up for a debate when an opportunity. Broadcasters are constantly under attack by the liberal folks saying stuff to you got to make sure that you're fair, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then broadcasters across the state give an opportunity to Kay Hagan to a free hour of airtime, and she doesn't show up. I mean, right. What kind of a statement is that?
Well, take a look at it, too. Senator Hagan has been in public office nearly more than twice the time of me. I was a PTA president 8 years ago. I wasn't in public office. She's a sitting U.S. senator. You would think that she would want to come in with all that experience and project and be proud of the things that she's done. Right. By the way, I've accepted invitations to MSNBC. I just did an interview after the debate this week, and I've been on it before. I was on it just after the end of the primary. I haven't seen her on Fox much, and I know she's been invited. You're absolutely right. Every one of the shows that I've been on always make it a point to invite Senator Hagan to be on there, and she's just not done it. She is not comfortable with admitting the fact that she's a rubber stamp for Harry Reid. Her first vote next year will be for Harry Reid as majority leader if we fail to get a majority. We're going to get a majority because we cannot have Harry Reid continue to shut down our U.S. Senate, the greatest deliberative body on the face of the planet.
All right, let's get to something really important. Who do you think is going to win tonight?
I'm hoping ECU covers the spread. It's a big spread, though. I think it's like 24. So that's. But I'm going to be there cheering them on. They're a great team. I tell you, I love watching them. When that Chapel Hill game, I thought I was watching an old basketball score. I said, wait a minute,
Senator, but Speaker Tillis would like all the Carolina fans to vote for him.
I do. I told everybody the other day. I pull for Chapel Hill, except when they're playing one or two other teams I kind of like too. But no, we've got it great. And incidentally, the things that are going on with the reports this week at Chapel Hill, I feel bad for that great institution. There were some people that made some bad decisions there, and I think they'll heal from it. But the Tar Heels are great. They make us proud. When I travel across this country, country, everybody knows Chapel Hill. Everybody knows the Tar Heels. Not just our basketball program, but just an incredible history and academic institution. We want to make sure that everybody knows out in Chapel Hill. I like you. There's just a couple other teams here I kind of like a lot too.
I was sitting there yesterday. Of course, I spent 7 years over there and worked on the Tar Heel Sports Network, but I'm as purple as they come. But I sat there yesterday, and you just can't help but just have an intense feeling of sadness that something that systematic went on for that long.
But one thing we have to do, it's about accountability. Sometimes people make mistakes, and they need to be held accountable for it. But contrast that again. I'll go back. I'll take it national again. The IRS targets people who happen to express their political views, and there's no accountability. The NSA scandal, no accountability. Benghazi, no accountability. I mean, the one thing that I'm expecting out of the folks here in North Carolina is that the people who made those bad decisions to be held accountable. Many of them need to lose their jobs because they made a bad decision. Imagine if the president and Senator Hagan would call for people who have made grievous mistakes, simply move them out of the way versus create excuses for keeping them in their jobs. Those are a lot of scandals that we haven't even had time to get to because of all the other failed policies. But that's just another example of failed leadership.
Well, thank you for spending the first day of voting in Greenville. I know you're going to be around town all day, and you might see Thom Tillis show up where you are today.
We'll be at the Victory Center today. We'll get around. We may try and get over to the Mellow Mush Room, and
come on over.
We will definitely be at the game tonight. I'm looking forward to being able to watch the game. It's great that it's a night game where I can do it and still continue the schedule.
We're going to have a lot of Pirate fans over at Mellow Mush Room between noon and 3. Come on out and say hi to them.
Great. Go
Good
Pirates.
To see you. And we'll see you. If we don't see you there, maybe we'll see you at the game tonight.
Yep.
All right. Speaker Thom Tillis, candidate for United States Senate, live in the studio this morning. Thom, thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Great to see you.
Appreciate it.